Someone wrote to me last month with a question that I have been sitting with ever since, and it went exactly like this. A Mecca. Every time I share good news, one specific person in my life goes strangely silent, or they say something small that entirely ruins the moment. I cannot prove anything, but my stomach knows before my mind does. Am I imagining this, or is there something real that I am sensing? You do everything right. You work hard, you celebrate other people, you try to be a genuine friend, and still, every time something good happens to you, someone close to you goes entirely cold, and you think it is your fault. The reason is not you. I get asked this more than almost anything else. How do you tell the difference between true spiritual discernment and simple paranoia? You see, 70% of people who report feeling chronically drained in their relationships also report that the exhaustion peaks immediately after they experience a personal success. A pipe breaks in your house the day after a specific relative visits. An argument starts out of nowhere right after you get a promotion. You feel this heavy, ugly twist in your chest, and you are told that you are just being too sensitive. But historical data tells a completely different story. According to studies of ancient Near Eastern anthropology, published by Oxford University Press in 2015, the phenomenon of the evil eye was not recorded as a myth, but as a biological and spiritual reality by over 90% of ancient cultures. And when the math of your relationships does not close, people start to think they are losing their minds. In the video today, I am going to show you exactly what is happening when you feel that shift in the atmosphere around certain people. I will show you where it comes from, the historical proof of how it operates, and most importantly, how to identify the people who secretly envy your blessings before they can do any real damage. And before we finish, I will give you the exact method King Solomon used to expose these hidden forces without destroying your own peace of mind. Before we begin, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. This is incredibly important for the YouTube algorithm to understand that this content brings value to you, and it tells the platform that you want to see more videos just like this one. The exhaustion you feel around certain people is not a lack of social skills. It is your spiritual immune system fighting an infection that you have not named yet. To understand what is happening in your life right now, we have to leave the modern psychological language behind for a moment and look at the ancient texts. Let me tell you what I found. My mother was an Igbo woman from Nsukka in Nigeria. She was a devout Catholic, but she also knew the old ways deeply. I remember being a young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, watching her draw specific protective symbols on our doorframe with quiet intensity. When I asked her why she was doing it, she would not give me a theological lecture. She would just say she was keeping the bad eyes out of our home. I grew up, moved to the United Kingdom, and eventually dismissed all of that as village superstition. My father was a British historian of ancient religions at University College London. He represented the ultimate peak of Western rationalism. He taught me to look at my mother's rituals as primitive coping mechanisms for a world she could not control. He believed everything could be explained by sociology and psychology. For years, I believed him. I thought I had outgrown the fear of the evil eye. But years later, when I was sitting in the basement archives of the British Museum, studying ancient Near Eastern languages for my degree at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, everything changed. I was translating a 2,000-year-old manuscript, a delicate piece of parchment that had survived centuries of war and empire. The air in those archives always smelled of dry dust and old leather, but that day, it felt heavy, and right there on the page, buried in a text about demonic expulsion, I found those exact same symbols my mother used to draw in Nsukka. That was the moment I realized the ancient world had secrets we had barely scratched, and that my father's academic skepticism was blinding him to half of reality. My mother, with absolutely no formal theological training in a university, understood something that modern science and modern psychology are only just beginning to put a name to. We have medicalized everything. We call it toxic behavior or bad vibes. We use sterile clinical words to describe something deeply terrifying. But the ancients had a very specific, highly technical vocabulary for the invisible forces that operate through human jealousy. They did not just treat it as a character flaw. They treated it as an open door to darkness. We like to think of envy as a harmless emotion, a fleeting feeling of wanting what someone else has. But the ancients knew better, and they treated it as a literal weapon. In biblical Hebrew, it is called Ayin Ra'ah, which translates directly to the evil eye. You might have been told that the evil eye is just a superstition, a myth for uneducated people to explain bad luck. But if you look at the primary biblical texts, you find something that should make you pay very close attention. In the 1st century, the evil eye was not a superstition. It was a recognized, formal ethical category in rabbinic literature. In the Talmud, specifically in the Tractate Gittin 68a and b, the ancient rabbis debated the reality of these unseen forces with intense academic rigor. They did not dismiss them. They categorized them. They understood that a human being could project spiritual destruction through their intense, unresolved bitterness. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 22 and 23, Jesus himself speaks of the evil eye. He says that if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. He was speaking a language that his 1st century Jewish audience understood perfectly. He was referencing the Ayin Ra'ah, and the Greek text of the New Testament gives us an even deeper layer of precision. The Greek word used for envy is phthonos. This is completely distinct from another Greek word, zelos, which means zeal or emulation. Zelos means that I see what you have, I admire it, and I want to work hard to get it too. Zelos builds societies. It creates healthy competition. But phthonos is entirely different. Phthonos means I see what you have, and I want to deprive you of it. Phthonos does not just want your blessing, it wants you to lose your blessing entirely. It is a spirit of destruction, not aspiration. This is exactly why that one friend goes completely quiet when you get a promotion or when you announce good news. They do not necessarily want your job. They just want you to not have it. They want to deprive you of the joy and the elevation. And this is not a new phenomenon of the social media age. To prove this to you, we have to look at the first fully documented case study of destructive envy in human history. We need to go back 3,000 years to the royal court of ancient Israel. To understand where this comes from, we are going to need to go back over 3 millennia. Let us look at the first book of Samuel, chapter 18, starting from verse 6. This is the story of King Saul and a young man named David. David has just returned from a massive, miraculous military victory against the Philistines. He has defeated Goliath. The whole nation is celebrating. The women of all the cities come out singing and dancing with tambourines, and they sing a specific song. They sing, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Verse 8 tells us that Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. Now pay attention to the exact timeline here. Up until this exact moment, Saul loved David. David was his armor bearer, his musician, the young man who brought him peace when he was troubled. David was loyal to a fault, but the moment David received a blessing and a public recognition that surpassed Saul, something fundamentally shifted in the atmosphere of the royal court. And here is where the biblical text gets absolutely chilling. Verse 9 says, "And Saul eyed David from that day on. He eyed him." That is the Ayin Ra'ah, the evil eye, the focused, resentful, depriving stare of phthonos. And what happens next? Does Saul just feel a little jealous, write it in his royal diary, and move on? Does he talk to a therapist to work through his insecurities? No. Verse 10 explicitly links this human envy to immeasurable spiritual oppression. It says that the very next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house. This is the first documented clinical case of what modern psychology calls narcissistic injury. But the biblical text goes infinitely deeper than a diagnostic manual. It does not just describe the psychological symptom of a fragile ego snapping under pressure. It describes the spiritual root. The envy, the phthonos, literally opened a door in the spiritual realm to a harmful spirit. The human emotion was the direct invitation for the demonic manifestation, and look carefully at how this spirit operates in the physical world. This is the mechanism you need to understand to protect yourself today. Saul never attacks David openly at first. He does not stand up in front of the court and declare war on him. Instead, he uses what looks like favor and generosity to set deadly traps. In verse 17, Saul offers his older daughter to David as a wife. A massive honor, right? Becoming the son-in-law of the king. It sounds incredibly generous, but Saul says to himself, "Let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him." He sends David on highly dangerous military missions, disguised as royal honors, hoping David will be killed in battle. He weaponizes his blessings. This mechanism functions exactly like carbon monoxide poisoning in your home. If someone breaks your living room window with a rock, you know you are under attack. You hear the glass shatter, you see the rock on the floor, you can immediately call the police and defend yourself. That is overt, visible hatred. It is scary, but it is honest. You know exactly who your enemy is and what they want. But carbon monoxide is completely invisible. It has absolutely no smell. It has no taste. You do not even know it is accumulating in the room. You just start feeling incredibly tired. You start getting unexplained headaches. You start losing your focus, your memory, and your peace of mind. You might even blame yourself for working too hard. And if you do not have a detector, you will quietly fall asleep and never wake up. The spirit of envy operates exactly like carbon monoxide. It comes disguised as a warm compliment. It comes disguised as a deep concern for your well-being. It comes disguised as an honorable mission or a favor. But its ultimate singular goal is your destruction. And we can take this analogy even further. Think about the historical story of the Trojan horse. The city of Troy was impenetrable from the outside. The walls were too high. The defenses were too strong. So what did the Greeks do? They built a massive, beautiful wooden horse, presented it as a gift, and left it at the gates. The Trojans brought the gift inside their own walls, celebrating their victory. But hidden inside that beautiful gift were soldiers waiting for nightfall to destroy the city from within. The spirit of envy is a Trojan horse. It is handed to you with a smile, wrapped in a compliment, but it carries soldiers meant to tear down your peace the moment you let your guard down. Consider another profound example from the ancient texts, the story of Joseph and his brothers in the book of Genesis. Joseph receives a coat of many colors from his father. It is a massive blessing, a symbol of extreme favor, but the text tells us that when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. This is the ultimate manifestation of the evil eye within a family unit. They did not just want their own coats. They wanted Joseph to be completely stripped of his. And what did they do? They threw him into a literal pit and then sold him into slavery in Egypt. They weaponized their brotherhood. They used their proximity to him to destroy him. This is the tragic reality of phthonos. It does not usually come from a stranger across the street. It comes from the person sitting next to you at the dinner table, the person who knows your weaknesses, your dreams, and your deepest vulnerabilities. And this is where the history leaves the ancient world and enters your own life. You have experienced this mechanism firsthand. You have received a compliment from a coworker on a new project and immediately felt a sudden, inexplicable drain of your energy. You have had a family member offer to help you plan a wedding or a business launch, but their help somehow caused 10 times more chaos, delay, and confusion than if you had just done it alone in the dark. You have shared your most fragile dreams with a friend, and they responded with a very practical, very logical list of reasons why you will probably fail, delivered in the sweetest, most caring tone of voice. They call it being realistic and looking out for you. The ancients called it the spirit of envy. And if you think this is just a localized problem or something that only happened in biblical times, you need to look at the global data. Look at the Italian malocchio, the Turkish nazar, the Latin American mal de ojo, the evil eye of the Middle East. During my years of research traveling across the monasteries of Ethiopia and the ancient libraries of Jerusalem, I found records from cultures that had zero contact with each other, yet they all described this exact same phenomenon across entirely different continents, separated by massive oceans and thousands of years of history. Human beings documented the exact same reality without ever speaking to each other. They all recorded that focused, resentful attention from another human being carries a literal spiritual weight that can cause physical sickness, mechanical failures, and material damage to your life. The pattern is always the same, no matter where you go on Earth. But here is where you might be asking a very logical question. If this invisible carbon monoxide force is everywhere, and if it comes perfectly disguised as friendship and love, how are we supposed to live? The Bible tells us to love everyone, to forgive everyone, to turn the other cheek. Does this mean we have to walk around suspecting every single person who looks at us? Does this mean we become paranoid, isolated hermits who never share our lives with anyone? The answer is no. And the reason is found in a mechanism that very few people in the modern church truly understand. The Apostle Paul talks about this in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 10. He lists the supernatural gifts of the Spirit, and one of them is the ability to distinguish between spirits. In the original Greek manuscript, this is written as diakriseas pneumaton, the discernment of spirits. For decades, people have completely misunderstood what this gift actually is. They think discernment means having a naturally suspicious personality. They think it means walking into a crowded room, crossing your arms, and judging everyone based on a bad vibe. But if you look at the Greek word diakriseas, it does not mean to judge a person or to condemn them. It means to separate, to distinguish, to evaluate the origin of a thing. It is a supernatural capacity to know instantly if a manifestation comes from the Spirit of God, from the human spirit, or from a demonic source. When Paul was in the city of Philippi in the book of Acts, chapter 16, he was followed by a slave girl who kept shouting, "These men are servants of the Most High God, who proclaim to you the way of salvation." For many days, she said the exact right words. She sounded perfectly orthodox. She was giving them free marketing. Her theology was technically correct. But Paul, using diakriseas pneumaton, became greatly annoyed, turned around, and cast a spirit of divination out of her. He did not judge the words. He discerned the origin. The words were good, but the spirit driving them was dark. My mother, Inasuka, did not have a degree in ancient Greek. She had never heard the phrase diakriseas pneumaton in her entire life, but she knew exactly what it was in practice. She could listen to a neighbor speak for 2 minutes, offering nothing but sweet compliments about our family. And long before the neighbor did anything objectively wrong, my mother would quietly tell me to keep my distance from that house. She recognized the origin of the spirit behind the words. She taught me that there is a profound difference between the normal fatigue of a long day of work and the spiritual exhaustion that hits you specifically after interacting with certain individuals. I used to think she was just being judgmental and harsh. I used to argue with her, armed with my father's Western rationalism. Now, having spent a decade researching the ancient texts and understanding the reality of spiritual warfare, I know she was exercising a documented, incredibly precise, spiritual gift. But wait, you might be thinking right now, how do I know if I have this gift? How do I know if my gut feeling in my stomach is the Holy Spirit warning me, or just my own past trauma making me paranoid? This is the exact line between divine wisdom and total madness, and Jesus Christ himself gave us the exact formula to tell the difference. In the Gospel of Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20, Jesus gives a warning that changes how we view every relationship. He says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." Now, I want you to notice carefully what he does not say here. He does not say, "Beware of wolves, so never trust anyone again." He does not say, "Beware of wolves, so isolate yourself in a bunker and cut off your entire family." He openly acknowledges that the deception is perfect. The wolf looks exactly like a sheep. It sounds like a sheep. It bleats like a sheep. It might even genuinely believe in its own mind that it is a sheep. So how in the world do you identify it? Jesus gives a profoundly objective, scientific, repeatable criterion. He says, "You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles?" He completely shifts the burden of discernment from a subjective, internal feeling to an objective, observable pattern over a long period of time. This is the ultimate test that separates you from paranoia. Paranoia accuses people based on a single incident. Paranoia panics over one weird look, one unreturned text message, or one awkward conversation. Paranoia says, "They looked at me funny at the party. Therefore, they must hate me and be plotting my downfall." But true biblical discernment is patient. It observes the fruit over time. It watches very carefully how the person reacts when you win big. It watches how they behave when you lose everything. It observes if their public words of support are consistently followed by private actions of sabotage. Think about the raw math of your own relationships. Let us look at the numbers. You give 10 hours of support to a friend who is going through a massive life crisis. You listen to their problems. You encourage them. You pray for them. You buy them meals. You let them sleep on your couch. Then, 6 months later, you get a small promotion at work, and you just need 5 minutes of their time to celebrate. And suddenly, they are far too busy. They are incredibly tired. They have a massive headache. Or they make a passive-aggressive comment about how easy you have always had it in life. The math simply does not close. The equation of the relationship is fundamentally broken. When you see this exact pattern repeated 3, 4, 5 times over the course of years, that is no longer a coincidence or a bad day. That is fruit. And once you clearly see the fruit, you have successfully identified the tree. And let me assure you, no amount of positive thinking or pretending it is not happening will change the nature of that tree. But what exactly do you do once you identify them? Do you scream at them? Do you expose them on social media? Do you confront them and demand an apology? This is where we turn to one of the most fascinating ancient texts in existence, the Testament of Solomon. This document, dating back to the first centuries of the Common Era, translated and studied by eminent scholars like James Charlesworth at Yale and Princeton, describes how King Solomon interacted with spiritual entities. Whether you view this text as literal history or as a profound theological allegory, the methodology it describes is absolute brilliance. The text says that Solomon did not run from demons in terror. He did not scream or panic. He interrogated them. He forced them to reveal their hidden names, their specific methods of operation, and the exact physical or behavioral signs that revealed their presence in a person. For example, there is a demon named Obazoth described in the text. This spirit operates specifically through envy and dark whispers, intentionally targeting prosperous families and newborn children. Obazoth wanders the world seeking out homes where there is peace and prosperity, not to steal anything physical, but simply to inject chaos. Solomon did not panic when he encountered these unseen forces. He systematically identified them. He named them. And by forcing them into the light and naming them, he completely stripped them of their hidden power. This is exactly what you must do with the envious people in your own life today. You do not need to confront them dramatically at Thanksgiving dinner. You do not need to start a massive neighborhood war. You simply need to name the spirit operating through them in the privacy of your own mind. When they give you a backhanded compliment wrapped in a smile, you do not internalize the insult and let it ruin your day. You mentally label it. You say to yourself, that is the spirit of envy. That is phthonos. When they try to sabotage your celebration with passive aggression, you do not let it destroy your joy. You observe it objectively and you name it. That is the wolf in sheep's clothing. By identifying it accurately, you completely remove its ability to confuse you. You're no longer wondering if you are crazy. You have diagnosed the spiritual infection. If you have stayed with me until this exact point in the video, you are already in a very small exclusive group of people. The vast majority of people walking around the world today have absolutely no idea that this spiritual dynamic even exists. They are constantly drained, constantly confused, constantly wondering why their friendships and family gatherings feel like active battlegrounds. They simply live with the devastating effects of envy without ever understanding the root cause. But you have moved past that now. You already know the historical precedent. You know the vital difference between the Greek words phthonos and zelos. You know the objective test of the fruit over time. You have the knowledge. The only thing that separates having knowledge from experiencing true freedom is action. And it was exactly for this reason that we took a major step and created the Solomonic Wisdom Protocol. I realized after years of teaching this that knowing these ancient truths conceptually is only the very first step. You need a daily, highly structured way to apply this discernment and actively protect your peace. The protocol gives you the exact historical prayers, the daily observation journals, and the precise mental frameworks derived directly from these ancient manuscripts to shield your mind, your finances, and your home from the spirit of envy. More than 4,000 people have already started using this method in their daily lives, and the most common feedback we consistently get is that they finally have accurate words for what they have been feeling their whole lives, and for the first time, they finally have peace. This complete framework will only be available at its current price for the next 48 hours. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on your screen right now to access it before the window closes. The pact between you and the modern psychological establishment might be broken. They might continue to tell you that it is all in your head, that you are just projecting your own insecurities, that there is no such thing as spiritual warfare, and that human envy is harmless. But there is a pact that no one can break, because it does not depend on anyone else validating you. It is the pact between you and the reality of your own God-given discernment. It is the ancient wisdom that your stomach knows before your logical mind does. Those who understand this early in life have a massive, unfair advantage over those who figure it out decades too late. I will be ending the video here. Have a good night and stay safe. Have you ever felt this specific pattern of exhaustion around someone close to you, only to realize years later that they were never truly on your side? Has your own intuition ever saved you from a relationship that looked perfect on paper but felt completely wrong in reality? Tell me about your experience in the comments below. I want to hear your story